My name is Charlotte Morgan. I am 33 years old, and I live in San Francisco. The first thing I heard was the steady beep of a machine. The first thing I felt was a terrible thirst. But the first thing I saw was an empty chair. I had been in a coma for 3 months. I didn't know that yet. I just knew that usually, when someone wakes up in a hospital, there is a hand holding theirs. There is a mother, a father, or a sibling waiting for a sign of life. In my room, there was only a nurse checking a chart. She looked up and her face went pale. She didn't smile. She looked sorry for me. "Miss Morgan," she whispered, "you're awake. We need to call the charity ward administrator." "Charity?" I croaked. My throat was dry as sand. "My father is Michael Morgan. He owns Aeroglyph Dynamics. I have private insurance." The nurse looked down at her shoes. She handed me a tablet. It was an email sent to the hospital administration 6 weeks ago. It was from my father's personal assistant. It was 2 sentences long. Regarding patient Charlotte Morgan. The family accepts the prognosis. We have stopped paying. My father is a billionaire. My stepmother wears diamonds to the grocery store. My half-brother bets sports cars on poker games. But for my life, they wouldn't spend a dime. They switched me to state funding and walked away. They thought I was gone forever. They thought they were finally free of me. They were wrong. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Charlotte Morgan. I am 33 years old. I lay in that hospital bed for 2 days after waking up, just staring at the ceiling. The doctors came in and out. They checked my reflexes. They shone lights in my eyes. They told me I was a miracle. They said surviving the car crash was unlikely, but waking up with my cognitive functions intact was even rarer. I didn't feel like a miracle. I felt like a discarded object. The nurse, whose name was Sarah, was kind to me. She brought me extra Jell-O. She helped me sit up when my muscles were too weak to hold my own weight. But she couldn't look me in the eye when I asked about my visitors. "Has anyone called?" I asked on the second morning. "My father, my stepmother." Sarah adjusted my IV drip. "We contacted the number on file, Charlotte. We told them you were awake. And they said they would be in touch with their legal team," she said softly. "Not with me, with their legal team." I needed to know the extent of the damage. I asked for my phone. It wasn't in the drawer with my personal effects. My clothes were there, cut open from the surgery, but my phone was gone. Sarah told me it had been destroyed in the crash. "Can I use the hospital phone?" I asked. I dialed my father's cell first. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed the house line, disconnected. I dialed my stepmother, Kimberly. She answered on the second ring. "Hello," her voice was crisp, impatient. I could hear clinking silverware in the background. She was probably at lunch. "Kimberly, it's me," I said. My voice was raspy. There was a long silence. I heard her set a glass down. "Charlotte," she said. She didn't sound happy. She sounded annoyed. "You're awake." "I've been awake for 2 days. Why haven't you come?" "We are very busy, Charlotte. The Aeroglyph Summit is next week. Your father is under a lot of stress." "I was in a coma," I said, my voice trembling. "You stopped paying for my care." The nurse showed me the email. "Well," she sighed. "The doctors said you had less than a 1% chance of waking up. It didn't make financial sense to keep burning money on a lost cause. We have a company to run. We have a reputation to maintain. We couldn't have a vegetable draining resources." A vegetable, that's what I was to her, an expense line on a spreadsheet. "I need my things," I said. "I need my apartment keys. I need to go home." "Oh, sweetie," she said, her tone dripping with fake sympathy, "you don't have an apartment anymore." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "What do you mean? We cleared it out last month. The lease was up and obviously we didn't renew it. We couldn't leave it sitting there gathering dust. It was depressing." "Where are my things? My clothes, my books, my mother's paintings?" "We sent some to storage, the rest." "Well, we donated it." "It was just clutter, Charlotte. You should be thanking me. I handled it all so your father wouldn't be upset." I hung up. I couldn't listen to her anymore. I borrowed a tablet from the hospital library later that afternoon. I logged into my social media accounts. My hands were shaking so bad it was hard to type the passwords. I went to my half-brother Ryan's profile. Ryan is 24. He has never written a line of code in his life. He failed business school twice. But there, in his latest photo, he was sitting in my chair. He was in my corner office at Aeroglyph Dynamics. It was the office I had earned after 10 years of working 80-hour weeks. The office where I developed the flight stabilization algorithm that made the company billions. The caption read, "Taking over the empire, New VP of Innovation. Big things coming. I scrolled down. There were comments from his friends. Congrats, bro, you deserve it. Finally got the corner spot. I felt sick. They hadn't just stopped paying for my hospital bills. They had erased me. I worked at Aeroglyph for 15 years. I started as an intern when I was 18. I didn't get special treatment because I was the owner's daughter. In fact, it was the opposite. My father, Michael, made me work harder than anyone else. He criticized every mistake. He never said good job. He only said do better. I thought he was trying to make me tough. I thought he was grooming me to take over one day. I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I made him enough money, he would finally look at me and see his daughter. But he didn't see a daughter. He saw a tool. And when the tool broke in a car accident, he threw it away. That evening, a process server walked into my hospital room. He was a small man in a cheap suit. He asked me to confirm my identity. I have papers for you, he said. He dropped a thick envelope on my bed and left without looking back. I opened the envelope. It was a legal filing. Petition for conservatorship. My father wasn't just trying to move on. He was filing to have me declared mentally incompetent. The document claimed that due to severe traumatic brain injury, I was unable to make decisions for myself. It asked the court to give Michael Morgan full control over my finances, my medical decisions, and my life. If he won, I wouldn't be able to access my own bank accounts. I wouldn't be able to sue him for stopping my medical care. I wouldn't be able to reclaim my job. He wanted to lock me away. He wanted to silence me. I sat there in the dim light of the hospital room, holding the papers. I cried. I didn't cry because I was sad. I cried because I was angry. I had given them everything. I had fixed their messes. I had covered for Ryan's incompetence. I had let Kimberly insult me at dinner parties. I had let my father take credit for my inventions, and this was my reward. I was alone. I had no home, no job, and a family that wanted me dead or silent. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I needed a lawyer. I didn't have much money. My personal accounts were likely frozen if my father had already started the legal process, but I had to try. I was trying to stand up, gripping the side of the bed, when the door opened. Two men walked in. I recognized one of them instantly. Christopher Vance. He was a venture capitalist, one of the richest men in Silicon Valley. He sat on the board of several major tech companies, but he had always kept his distance from Aeroglyph. He was known for being ruthless but fair. The other man was older, Asian American, wearing a slightly rumpled suit and thick glasses. He carried a battered leather briefcase. I didn't know him. Miss Morgan, Christopher Vance said. He didn't smile, but his voice wasn't cold. It was serious. Please stay in bed, you need your strength. Who are you? I asked, sinking back onto the pillows. Did my father send you? The older man let out a dry, humorless laugh. Michael Morgan would rather cut off his own hand than send us here. He walked to the side of the bed and set his briefcase down. My name is David Chin. I was your mother's attorney. I froze. My mother, Jennifer Hayes, died when I was 12. It was a sudden aneurysm. My father rarely spoke of her. When he did, he painted her as a sweet, simple woman who loved painting and gardening. He acted like he was the genius and she was just the supportive wife. I haven't heard your name before, I said to David. That was by design, David said. Jennifer wanted it that way. She knew Michael. She knew what he was capable of. David opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. They looked old. The paper was slightly yellowed at the edges. Charlotte, Christopher Vance stepped forward. We have been visiting you every day for the last 2 months. We were waiting for you to wake up. We were also making sure the hospital didn't pull the plug completely. I covered the gap funding anonymously. I stared at him. You paid for my life support. Your mother paid for it, he corrected. I just facilitated the transfer. I was confused. My mother had been dead for 20 years. I don't understand, I said. David Chin adjusted his glasses. Your mother was a very smart woman, Charlotte. She was also a very rich woman. But she kept her finances separate from Michael's. She knew Michael was greedy. She knew he loved power more than people. And she worried about you. He handed me a document. The header read, The Jennifer Hayes Revocable Trust. Your mother created a deadman's switch in her estate planning, David explained. It is a very specific clause. It relates to the guardianship and care of her only child, you. He pointed to a paragraph highlighted in yellow. In the event that Charlotte Morgan suffers a medical incapacitation, and her legal guardian or next of kin fails to provide adequate care or abandons financial responsibility, the trust activates immediately. I read the words 3 times. Abandonment, David said clearly. When your father stopped paying for your care, he triggered the clause. When he filed for conservatorship claiming you were damaged goods, he sealed it. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Christopher Vance said, a small smile finally touching his lips, that everything your mother locked away 20 years ago is now yours. And it's not just money. David pulled out a silver hard drive from his bag. It looked like an old model, heavy and brick-like. Your mother left you a legacy, Charlotte. She knew you were like her. She knew you would be brilliant. She also knew Michael would try to use you. She left instructions that you were only to receive this if Michael betrayed you completely. She hoped he never would. She hoped she was wrong about him. She wasn't wrong, I whispered. No, David said sadly. She wasn't. What is the legacy? I asked. Christopher Vance looked at me with intensity. Control, Charlotte. She left you the truth, and she left you the power to burn Aeroglyph Dynamics to the ground or take it over. I looked at the 2 men. For 3 months my family had left me to die. But these 2 strangers, men loyal to a ghost, had sat by my bed. Why are you helping me? I asked Christopher. You're a VC, you invest in winners. I'm a woman in a hospital gown with no assets. I knew your mother, Christopher said. We went to grad school together at MIT. She was the smartest person in the room, always. Michael was just the guy who carried her books and took credit for her ideas. I promised her that if this day ever came, I would stand with her daughter. He checked his watch. We don't have much time. The Aeroglyph Summit is in 4 days. Michael is planning to announce a new operating system. We know it's based on your code. It is, I said. I wrote it before the accident. He's going to claim Ryan wrote it, Christopher said. And then he's going to announce that you are permanently incapacitated. I felt a fire light up in my chest. It was a cold, hard flame. It replaced the sadness. What do we do? I asked. David Chin smiled. We execute the trust. But first, you need to know the truth about who really built that company. David sat in the chair next to my bed and began to tell me a story. It was a story that changed my entire life. You grew up believing Michael founded Aeroglyph, David started. That's the company myth, the garage startup, the lone genius. Yes, I said. He talks about it in every interview. It's a lie, David said flatly. Michael didn't write the core code for Aeroglyph. Jennifer did. He opened a folder and showed me patent filings from 25 years ago. The names on the patents were Jennifer Hayes, not Michael Morgan. Your mother was the architect, David said. She developed the original dynamic thrust algorithms. Michael was the salesman. He was good at talking to investors. He was good at wearing suits. But the tech, that was 100% Jennifer. I looked at the papers. My mother's signature was at the bottom of every page, a looping, elegant script I barely remembered. When you were born, David continued, Jennifer stepped back from the daily operations to be with you. She trusted Michael to run the business, but she kept her shares. She owned 60% of the company. 60%, I gasped. But Michael says he owns 90%. He does, on paper, David said. When Jennifer died, Michael produced a document, a transfer of stock ownership, supposedly signed by your mother 2 days before her death. It gave him everything. David paused, his face tightening with anger. I always knew it was a forgery. Jennifer would never have signed it. She was planning to leave you her shares in a trust, but I couldn't prove it. The signature was perfect. He must have practiced it for years. So he stole the company, I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He stole it from her. Yes, David said, but he made a mistake. He didn't know about the Deadman's switch. Jennifer had a secret safety deposit box in Zurich. In that box, she kept the original incorporation documents, and she kept a notarized affidavit stating that she never transferred her shares to Michael. Christopher Vance spoke up. The terms of the trust are clear. If Michael fails in his duty as your father, the trust challenges the stock transfer. We have the proof now. The forgery is provable because the document Michael signed references a tax law that wasn't passed until a year after she died. It's a sloppy fake, but nobody ever looked close enough because nobody challenged him. He's been a fraud for 20 years, I said. I thought back to all the times my father yelled at me for my code. It's not elegant enough, Charlotte. This isn't how I would do it. He didn't know how to do it. He was criticizing me to hide his own ignorance. He needed me to fix the code because he couldn't. He needed me to run the R&D department because without me, and without my mother, he was just a man in an empty suit. And Ryan was just like him, useless, arrogant. There is more, David said. He pulled out a sheet of numbers. Since your accident, Michael has been terrified. With you in a coma, the innovation stopped. The new system, the one you were building, wasn't finished. Ryan tried to finish it. He can't, I said. He doesn't understand the kernel architecture. Exactly, Christopher said. So they panicked. Michael authorized a backdoor deal to sell the incomplete data to a Chinese competitor. He's trying to cash out before the stock crashes. He's committing federal securities fraud. He's telling the board the product is ready, while secretly selling the IP out the back door. I looked at the documents. The dates were recent, just last week. If he does this, I said, Aeroglyph is destroyed. The technology my mother built. It will be gone. That is why we need to act now, Christopher said. The summit is in 2 days. He plans to announce the success of the new system to pump the stock price, and then announce your incapacitation to prevent you from ever looking at the books. Then he sells. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The hurt was gone. The betrayal had burned it all away. Now there was only clarity. I looked at the two men. I need to get out of this hospital, I said. We have a car waiting, Christopher said, but you are weak. I don't care, I said. I pulled the IV tape off my hand. My mother built that company. I built the technology that keeps it alive. I am not going to let them sell it for scrap. We have a secure location, Christopher said. A suite at the Four Seasons, rented under a shell company. We have servers set up. We have medical staff on standby. Good, I said, because I have work to do. Leaving the hospital was harder than I thought. My legs were like jelly. I had to use a wheelchair to get to the car. The sunlight hurt my eyes. The noise of the city was overwhelming after 3 months of silence. But when we got to the hotel suite, I forced myself to walk. I held onto the furniture. I walked from the door to the desk. Then I did it again. Christopher had set up a command center in the living room, 3 large monitors, a high-speed connection, and most importantly, my mother's legacy key. David handed me a lanyard. Attached to it was an old security badge. It had my mother's photo on it. She looked so young. She looked like me. This is an executive override badge, David said. Jennifer hard-coded it into the system's foundation. Michael tried to update the security protocols a dozen times over the years, but he never wiped the root directory because he didn't know how. This badge still grants founder-level access. It opens everything, I asked. Everything, David said. Emails, financial records, server logs, security cameras. I sat down at the computer. My fingers felt stiff, but as soon as they touched the keyboard, muscle memory took over. I scanned the badge. The screen flickered. A command prompt appeared. Access granted. Welcome, Jennifer. I felt a lump in my throat. Hello, Mom, I whispered. I started digging. First, I went for the emails. I needed to know exactly what they had said about me. I needed the ammunition to steal my heart. I searched for Charlotte in my father's inbox. From Michael Morgan to Kimberly Morgan, date September 12 subject. The problem, the doctors say she's stable but unresponsive. This might be a blessing, Kim. If she doesn't wake up, we don't have to explain why she's not at the summit. We can frame it as a tragedy. The brilliant daughter lost too soon. It plays well with the press, better than having her around asking questions about the accounts. I read the next one. From Ryan Morgan to Michael Morgan, date October 4 subject. Office, Dad, I'm moving my stuff into her office today. I threw out her notebooks, just a bunch of scribbles anyway. When do I get the title bump? I need the VP's salary to cover some debts. From Michael Morgan to Ryan Morgan, date October 4 subject. Ray, office, take the office. Just make sure you look busy, and don't worry about the salary. Once we declare her incompetent, her trust fund reverts to the family pool. We'll be flush. They were counting my money before I was even dead. They are monsters, I said to the empty room. Yes, Christopher said from the doorway. He was holding a cup of coffee. But monsters are sloppy. I switched to the technical servers. I needed to see what Ryan had done to my code. It was worse than I thought. He had tried to patch the unfinished sections of my flight algorithm with open-source code he found online. It was a mess. It was dangerous. If they installed this on a plane, the navigation system would crash mid-flight. He's going to kill people, I said, pointing at the screen. This code is unstable. If they launch this at the summit, if they demo it live, it will fail. That's the plan, I said, turning to Christopher. I need 48 hours. I need to compile all this evidence. The fraud, the emails, the stolen code, the danger to the public. And then, Christopher asked. Then we go to the summit, I said. You can't just walk in, David warned. They have security. Michael will have you removed the second he sees you. He won't see me coming, I said. I have the founder badge. I can access the building's internal systems. I can control the lights, the audio, the projection screens. I looked at the code on the screen. I began to type. I'm not just going to expose them, I said. I'm going to let them hang themselves first. I spent the next 2 days in that chair. I barely slept. I ate protein bars and drank coffee. My body was weak, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. I recovered the deleted security footage from my office. I watched Kimberly throwing my mother's photos into a trash bag. I watched Ryan laughing as he spun around in my chair. I built a presentation. It wasn't a corporate slide deck. It was a dossier of crimes. By the evening before the summit, I was ready. David came in with a garment bag. I went shopping for you, he said awkwardly. I didn't think you wanted to storm the castle in sweatpants. He hung the bag up. It was a white suit. Sharp, tailored, professional, it looked like armor. Thank you, David, I said. There is one more thing, Christopher said. I made a call. There is someone on the inside who wants to help. He reached out to me when he heard rumors you were awake. Who? The head of security for the summit, Marcus. I remembered Marcus. He was a good man. He had been with the company for 10 years. He knew how hard I worked. He's coming here tonight, Christopher said. He has something for you. I looked at the screen one last time. The file was ready. I named it the Ghost EXE. My father wanted a tragedy. I was going to give him one. But it wouldn't be mine. The day before the summit, they found me. I shouldn't have been surprised. My father has people everywhere. He has private investigators on retainer. When I checked out of the hospital against medical advice, the alert must have gone straight to his phone. I was in the hotel suite, organizing the digital files with David, when there was a sharp knock on the door. Christopher checked the security camera feed. It's Kimberly, he said. His voice was tight. And Ryan. Let them in, I said. David looked worried. Charlotte, you don't have to face them yet. We can handle this. No, I said, standing up. I smoothed down my shirt. My hands were shaking, but I clasped them behind my back so they wouldn't see. I need to hear it. I need to hear them say it to my face. I need to know there is nothing left to save. Christopher opened the door. Kimberly walked in first. She looked perfect as always. Her hair was blown out in soft waves. She was wearing a beige cashmere coat that probably cost more than my first car. She didn't look at Christopher. She looked straight at me. Her eyes were cold, like blue glass. Ryan trailed behind her. He looked nervous. He was wearing a suit that was too shiny, and he kept checking his phone. Well, Kimberly said, looking around the modest hotel suite. This is a step down from the penthouse, isn't it? But I suppose beggars can't be choosers. What do you want, Kimberly? I asked. My voice was quiet. We want to help you, Charlotte, she said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. Your father is very worried. You're not well, you have brain damage. You shouldn't be running around the city with these people. She waved a dismissive hand at David and Christopher. I'm fine, I said. You're not fine, Ryan snapped. He stepped forward. You're confused. You think you can just leave the hospital? Dad is filing the papers tomorrow. You're going to be put in a facility where you can get help. A facility, I repeated. You mean a prison? It's a care home, Kimberly said smoothly. Top of the line, we are willing to pay for it. In fact, she scribbled something on a check and tore it off. She held it out to me. I looked at the number. $75,000. What is this? It's a settlement, Kimberly said. Consider it a severance package from the family. Take this, go to the facility quietly, sign the papers consenting to the conservatorship, and we will make sure you are comfortable. We'll even increase the monthly allowance to $2,000. $75,000, I said. That's what you think my life is worth. That's what you think my mother's company is worth. It's not your company, Ryan shouted. His face turned red. It's Dad's company, it's my company, I'm the VP of Innovation. I'm the one launching the new system tomorrow. You mean the system built on my code? I asked. The code you stole. The code you don't understand, Ryan laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. Nobody cares who wrote the code, Charlotte. They care who sells it. And you're a ghost. You're a damaged coma girl who nobody likes. Dad told the board you're violent. He told them you're unstable. If you show your face at the summit, security will drag you out. Ryan, Kimberly warned, touching his arm. She looked back at me, her face softening into a fake smile. Charlotte, be reasonable. You have no money, you have no home. We cleared out your apartment, remember? You have nothing. If you fight us, we will crush you in court. It will take years. You'll be destitute. Take the check, go away. Let us handle the business. I looked at the check in her hand, then I looked at her face. For 15 years, I had tried to make this woman like me. I had bought her birthday gifts. I had helped her with her charity galas. I had tutored Ryan in math when he was failing high school. I had desperate, pathetic hope that if I was good enough, they would love me. I realized now that it was never possible. You cannot make a snake love you. You can only make sure it doesn't bite you. I don't want your money, I said. Kimberly's eyes narrowed. Don't be stupid. I'm not the one being stupid, I said. You should leave. If you don't take this, Ryan threatened, stepping closer. I swear to God, Charlotte, I will make sure you never work in this industry again. I will blacklist you. I will tell everyone you're crazy. Get out, Christopher said. He stepped between me and Ryan. He was taller than Ryan and much broader. She asked you to leave. Ryan sneered, but he backed down. Kimberly put the check back in her purse. She looked at me with pure disgust. You're just like your mother, stubborn, emotional, weak. You'll regret this, Charlotte. When you're sleeping on the street, don't call us. They turned and walked out. The door slammed shut behind them. I stood there for a long moment. The silence in the room was heavy. Did you get it? I asked. David lifted a small recording device from the table. The red light was blinking. Every word, attempted coercion, threats, blackmail. It's all here. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. They really hate me, I whispered. They fear you, Christopher corrected. That's not the same thing. An hour later, there was another knock on the door. I flinched. I thought they had come back. I thought maybe they had brought police or hired muscle. But when Christopher opened the door, a large man in a dark tactical jacket walked in. He had a shaved head and a thick scar running through his eyebrow. He looked intimidating, but his eyes were kind. It was Marcus, the head of security for Aeroglyph Dynamics. I hadn't seen Marcus in 3 months. The last time I saw him, he was holding the elevator door for me as I left work late, the night before my accident. Miss Morgan, he said. His voice was deep and gravelly. He took off his cap and held it in his hands. Marcus, I said, I'm surprised to see you. I heard you were awake, he said. I heard what they did to you, the charity ward. That's not right. He looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from foot to foot. Mr. Vance contacted me, Marcus said, nodding at Christopher. He said you were planning something for the summit. He said you needed access. I do, I said. But Marcus, if you help me, you'll lose your job. My father will fire you. Marcus let out a short, dry chuckle. I've already resigned, Miss Morgan. My letter is dated for tomorrow morning, right after the keynote speech. Why? Because I can't work for a thief, Marcus said, and I won't work for a liar. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, black notebook. It was battered and worn. He walked over and handed it to me. What is this? I asked. It's the night log, he said, for the last 5 years. I opened the book. It was a handwritten record of everyone who entered and exited the Aeroglyph building after hours. I turned the pages. I saw my name over and over again. October 12, C. Morgan in at 7 o'clock, C. Morgan out at 23:45. October 13, C. Morgan in at 6:45. C. Morgan out at 1:30. November 4, R. Morgan in at 10:30. R. Morgan out at 14 o'clock lunch. November 4, C. Morgan in at 7 o'clock. C. Morgan out at 2:15. Page after page, year after year. It was a physical record of my life. It showed exactly who was building the company and who was barely showing up. Why did you keep this? I asked. My wife works in R&D, Marcus said quietly. She told me who fixed the bugs. She told me who came up with the ideas, and then I'd see your father on TV taking the credit. I'd see Ryan walking around like he owned the place. It bothered me. He looked me in the eye. We saw you, Charlotte, the security team, the cleaning crew, the junior engineers. We saw whose car was always the first in the lot and the last to leave. We knew. I felt my throat tighten. All those lonely nights in the office. All those weekends I spent coding while my family was on vacation in Aspen or Paris. I thought I was invisible. I thought nobody cared. Thank you, I choked out. There's more, Marcus said. I know the security protocols for the summit tomorrow. Michael has ordered a facial recognition ban on you. If the cameras spot you, the guards are ordered to detain you immediately. I expected that, I said. But, Marcus smiled, a small, conspiratorial grin. I control the exclusion list. I took the liberty of adding a new entry to the VIP clearance database this morning. He handed me a plastic ID card. It didn't have my photo on it. It had a generic silhouette. This is a vendor all-access pass, he said. It gets you into the backstage tech area, it gets you into the audio booth, and it gets you onto the stage wings. Marcus, I said, this is dangerous for you. My wife is proud of me, he said simply. That's all that matters. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Give them hell, Miss Morgan, he said, for all of us. I held the notebook to my chest. I felt a surge of strength I hadn't felt since I woke up. I wasn't just doing this for my mother anymore. I was doing it for Marcus. For his wife, for every person at that company who did the work while my father took the bow. I looked at Christopher and David. We have the proof, I said. We have the access. We have the plan. We move at dawn, Christopher said. The Aeroglyph Summit was held in the Moscone Center. It was a massive event. 3,000 attendees. Investors, press, tech enthusiasts. The room was bathed in blue laser light. The music was loud and pulsing. I was backstage, hidden in the shadows of the tech booth. Marcus had walked me right past the checkpoints. Nobody looked twice at a woman in a white suit with a vendor badge. They assumed I was PR or event staff. On the massive screen above the stage, a video played. It was a montage of my father's achievements. It showed him shaking hands with presidents. It showed him launching rockets. Then, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the center of the stage. My father walked out. He looked older than I remembered. He looked tired, but he put on his famous smile. The crowd cheered. Welcome, he boomed into the microphone. Welcome to the future. I watched him from the monitor in the booth. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would break my ribs. Today, my father said, we launched the Aeroglyph 1 operating system. A revolution in flight safety, a system that thinks for itself. He paused for dramatic effect. But first, he said, his voice dropping to a somber, sad tone, I must address a personal tragedy. As many of you know, my daughter Charlotte was involved in a terrible accident 3 months ago. A murmur went through the crowd. She suffered severe brain trauma, he lied. He wiped a fake tear from his eye. It breaks my heart to say that she will not be joining us again. She requires full-time care. But she would want us to continue. She would want her brother, Ryan, to carry the torch. He gestured to the side of the stage. Ryan walked out, waving to the crowd. He looked smug, he looked like a winner. Ryan has worked tirelessly to finish this system, my father said. He is the architect of our future. That was the signal. I looked at the sound engineer next to me. He was one of Marcus's guys. He nodded. I pulled the legacy key, my mother's badge, from my pocket. I swiped it across the master control panel. System override initiated. Authority, J. HAYES, founder. The massive screen behind my father flickered. The slick marketing video cut out. The crowd gasped. The screen went black for a second. Then a document appeared. It was 50 feet tall. It was the do not resuscitate order my father had signed for me. Then the email, we have stopped paying. Then the internal emails from Ryan. I threw out her notebooks. When do I get the title bump? The room went deadly silent. My father turned around. He looked at the screen. He froze. Technical difficulties, Ryan shouted into his microphone. Cut the feed. Cut the feed. But they couldn't cut the feed. I had locked them out. I walked out from the wings. The spotlight found me. The white suit reflected the light. I walked to the center of the stage. My father looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. His face went gray. Charlotte, he whispered. The microphone picked it up. Hello, Dad, I said. My voice was steady. It echoed through the massive hall. Security, Ryan screamed. Get her off the stage. She's crazy. She's escaped from the hospital. 2 guards started to run toward me, but Marcus stepped out from the shadows and blocked their path. He crossed his massive arms. The guards stopped. I turned to the audience. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I spoke to them like I was in a meeting. My name is Charlotte Morgan, I said. My father just told you I have brain damage. He told you I was gone. I pressed a button on a remote clicker I held in my hand. The screen changed again. This time it showed the code. On the left, original kernel author, C. Morgan/J. Hayes. On the right, current patch author, R. Morgan. Red lines highlighted the errors in Ryan's code. This is the system they are trying to sell you today, I said. The code on the right is unstable. If you install it, planes will fall out of the sky. The crowd erupted. People stood up, journalists started snapping photos furiously. "You're lying," my father screamed. He lunged for me, but he stumbled. "She's lying, she's sick." "And this," I said, ignoring him, "is the incorporation document for Aeroglyph Dynamics." The screen changed to the old, yellowed paper. My mother's signature was massive. "My mother, Jennifer Hayes, founded this company," I said. "She owned 60% of the shares. My father stole them using a forged document after she died." I looked at the cameras. I looked at the world watching. "My father is not a genius," I said. "He is a fraud, and the company doesn't belong to him, it belongs to me." My father looked at the screen, then at the crowd, then at me. He looked small. He looked defeated. He dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a loud screech. The next hour was chaos. The SEC, who must have been watching the livestream, arrived before the building had even cleared out. Christopher Vance had tipped them off that morning. I watched from the side of the stage as federal agents walked toward my father. He tried to run. He actually tried to run toward the back exit, but there were agents there too. They put him in handcuffs right in front of the investors he had lied to for 20 years. Ryan was crying. He was sitting on the edge of the stage, his head in his hands. He kept saying, "I didn't know, I just did what he told me." He looked like a child, a spoiled, broken child. Kimberly was trying to leave. She was shouting at a police officer, telling him who she was, threatening to sue him. But when she saw the cameras pointed at her, she covered her face with her expensive coat and let them lead her away for questioning regarding the fraud. The board of directors called an emergency meeting right there in the green room. Christopher Vance led the meeting. He held my mother's trust documents in his hand. "The evidence is irrefutable," Christopher said to the pale-faced board members. "Michael Morgan has committed fraud, embezzlement, and attempted corporate manslaughter by releasing dangerous code. The trust activates immediately." The chairman of the board, a woman named Alina who had always been cold to me, looked at me with new respect and fear. "What do you want, Charlotte?" she asked. "I want them gone," I said. "All of them, Michael, Ryan, Kimberly, stripped of all titles, stripped of all shares, removed from the building immediately." "Done," Alina said. "We will issue the press release within the hour." "And," I continued, "I want my mother's seat. I want the chair." The room was silent. "You are the majority shareholder," Christopher said. "It is your right." "I don't just want the shares," I said. "I want to run the company. I'm the only one who knows how the code works. I'm the only one who can fix the mess Ryan made. If you want Aeroglyph to survive the stock crash that is coming tomorrow, you need me." Alina nodded slowly. "She's right. The stock is tanking right now. The only way to stabilize it is to put the real founder in charge. The market loves a redemption story." "Then it's settled," Christopher said. I walked out of the green room. I walked back onto the empty stage. The workers were taking down the banners. The floor was covered in confetti that had never been fired. I looked out at the empty seats. It was over. The lie was over. Ryan walked past me, flanked by security guards carrying boxes of his things. He stopped, his eyes were red and puffy. "You ruined everything," he spat. "No, Ryan," I said calmly. "I just turned on the lights." 3 months later, I sat in the corner office, my office. But it didn't look like my father's office anymore. I had removed the giant oil painting of him. I had removed the heavy mahogany desk that looked like a fortress. Instead, the walls were covered in whiteboards. My mother's paintings, the ones I had recovered from storage, hung on the walls. They were abstract, colorful, full of life. The company was different too. We had taken a hit in the stock market, sure, but we were rebuilding. I had fired the yes men my father had hired. I promoted the quiet workers, the ones like Marcus's wife, who actually did the work. Marcus was back, reinstated as head of global security with a massive raise. I looked out the window at the San Francisco skyline. My father was awaiting trial. He was looking at 20 years for fraud. He called me once from jail. I didn't answer. Kimberly had filed for divorce the day after the arrest. She was fighting for assets that didn't exist anymore. The government had frozen everything. She was selling her jewelry to pay her lawyers. Ryan was working at a car rental agency in Ohio. I heard he was actually doing okay. Maybe without the pressure to be a genius, he could finally just be a person. I turned back to my desk. There was a photo frame there. It was a picture of me and my mother, taken a week before she died. We were laughing. I picked up the phone. "Connect me to the legal department, please," I said. "Yes, Miss Morgan," the assistant said. I want to finalize the paperwork for the foundation, I said. The Jennifer Hayes Foundation for Women in Tech. It would provide scholarships, mentorship, and legal protection for women in the industry. It would ensure that no daughter was ever erased again, that no brilliant woman was ever hidden behind a man in a suit. I hung up the phone. I felt a deep, quiet peace. It wasn't the thrill of victory. It was the relief of truth. I opened my laptop. The code was waiting for me, clean, elegant, honest. I typed a single line of comment at the top of the new kernel. / coded by C. Morgan and J. Hayes. The ghost in the code was never gone. She was just waiting for me to wake up. And now that I was awake, I was never going back to sleep. I started to type. The cursor blinked, steady and bright, like a heartbeat.